Today I'll be covering non-proto expense budgeting. These budgets are for CHG only. There should be no line items for CSG or manufacturing or any other groups outside of CHG. What you're currently looking at is the directory within Box, and we have 7 different files here, each one corresponding with a different PIN. So before you do any updates, you need to know what PIN you want to charge the expenses to, and then you would select that file. So in this example, we're going to go with access. So I've already opened it up. And when you open it, you would see something that looks like this. You can go ahead and ignore the top 2 smaller tables. That's summary information, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. So starting off with the first column, or I'm sorry, if we start with row 15, it describes the type of entry that's required. So if it says entry required, it's just a free form. You just type in what you need. If it says no entry, that means you can skip over it. Uh, Basically, it means there's some kind of formula in there, and I've also grayed out the columns to help remind you to go ahead and skip over them. Then there's a pick list, which I think everybody knows what that is, but it's just a set of defined options for you to pick from. And those are the only 3 data entry types that we have. So if we start with column A, you just put in your user ID. You can skip over the next area because that's a no entry. Then the first column after that is the department, which is a pick list. When you select a pick list, you will see that there's multiple departments in here. And what is going on is we are capturing all the expenses for the PIN for the director, whether it's going to charge his department specifically or value engineering departments, just so he can have everything in one place for him to look at. So you need to kind of be careful here a little bit. If you want to charge value engineering, make sure you pick that department. If it's going to charge to CHG because it's not value engineering, then make sure you select the proper department for that. After you've made that selection, then come on over to the column to the right for a cost category. Same kind of thing. It's a pick list. Select the appropriate cost category for the line item you're about to enter. Column next to that is OPEX and CAPEX, and that's just again a simple formula. And then moving on, you go to the project name. So this is the project that should be charged with the expense you're going to add. This again is a pick list, and this is based on the list that I provide by periodically going into Clarity, and I will just do pretty much a dump of all the projects against a given PIN, and then I'll sync it up to this so you guys can just select from that. In the event that it's not there for some reason, maybe there's a timing issue or something, then go ahead and leave this blank, and we'll add additional information in the justification column that we'll get to in a second. The next 3 columns, go ahead and skip over. They're formulas only, which leads us to the description column. With the description column, you enter the first thing you do is enter your user ID in parentheses, and then enter in a description of the expense that you want to request funds for. Then you go to the justification column next to that, where you justify why you need that expense, and then also if it doesn't get funded, what's the impact? So this is important because it helps the directors make their decisions on whether they want to fund it now, fund it later, or not fund it at all. So that's a good perspective for them. Also, if you didn't or weren't able to put in a project because it wasn't in the pick list and you left it blank, this is the place where you would put project information. So the first thing we want is the clarity code. If you put in the clarity code, you're good, and then I'll go find it and update the pick list. If there is no clarity code, then go ahead and hit the project name, enter that in there, and then I'll update the pick list with I'll just manually update the pick list with a project name that's not in clarity, just so we can keep track of it. The column next to that is a transaction type. Basically, this is 3 different things to pick from. You have BATS, PR, or cross charge. And this basically is how you plan to initiate the expense. So probably 95, 99% of what we do is going to be PRs with a handful of cross charges. And very seldom does anybody use bats. I think access switching is currently the only pin using bats. Um, so anyway, just enter the way you plan to initiate that expense into this column. And then moving on, we can skip the next 4 columns. I'll come back to that in a second. And then you would fill in the last 6 columns with the dollar amount that corresponds with the line item entry that you just entered in there. So we ask that you go as far to the right as you can because we want a 6-quarter outlook. We realize that it gets less accurate the further out you go, but some information is better than no information. So please fill it out as far as you can, whenever you can. And at this point, you're pretty much done for the budget planning process. The next step after that is we'll freeze all the entries, and I will then take it and I will update these 4 columns in this example with the Q1 information. So I will take these Q1 values here, and I will put them here, and then I will clear out all of these columns. I'll update it to Q1, and then I will turn it over to the directors to go look at each line item that has a dollar value and make a decision, basically whether they want to fund it, gap it, or not prioritize it. Those are their 3 options. So they go through each one of them and just make a decision however they see fit. As they do that, this table here called current quarter summary corresponds to those changes. So as they approve, funded, gap, or not prioritize, these dollar amounts will adjust accordingly. Before I send it to the directors, I will have entered the commit numbers for the OPEX and the CAPEX, and those will be their targets. So as they're making their decisions, they're going to try to align with these targets the best that they can. Okay. At that point, then they let me know when they're done, and then we'll go ahead and review it with Scott and make sure he understands everything and he's okay with it. And then after that, we'll then meet with Marco and have a similar review with him. At that point, after everything's been approved, I'll then do an upload into Budget Tool for Uber bands, which is basically by department, by cost category. And I will come back to the spreadsheet and I will update the band numbers for each line item that has been approved. And I'll also put in a reference number, a unique reference number for each line item, so we can do line item tracking during our spend if that's something that you or the directors want to do. Then finally, this table on the far left at the top is just simply a 6-quarter outlook, and that's basically just looking at all the requests that have come in versus our commit number and then our budget outlook that we believe is where we're headed, and we'll compare that to see our variance, and we'll do that for OPEX and CAPEX there as well. And that concludes this overview. Thanks, and have a great day.